Do you see that? Like, can you click it and see if it goes live?
What happened?
I hit go live and it's not doing anything. It's still, see how it's still counting down for scheduled?
That is weird. I just click go live and it won't. Maybe we have to wait till then.
We usually don't have to.
It's weird.
I guess let's count it down and see if it works.
Look who we are.
It says the broadcast is already live. Can't change the start time. Is it like, check on YouTube? Is it live?
Are we
It says
live?
we're live. It says we're live.
Hello, everybody.
So here's where it's going to become an issue. How are we going to stop the thing, right?
Right.
But okay, we're here. It says the recording hasn't started yet on here, but I just checked on YouTube and it says we're live.
I can see us.
Oh boy, I'm waiting for this. This is gonna be a struggle because I really worry that like we're not gonna have audio for this to put up online afterwards. Okay. Hello and welcome to the 154th episode of the Stateside Soccer Show. My name is Jordan Wiegand, and with me today is a man that I was thinking of sending home during this World Cup. I had it up to here. He wasn't giving it at all in our training podcast, and I was ready to send him home. But you know what? I'm not going to say who it is. I'm not going to say who it is. He is here, though. It's Logan stuff.
It's that awkward. I mean, I'm going to call my dad if you do, just because, or our avid listener, Chuck Wiegand. I'm going to call him and say, your son is about to boot me from
it. Yeah. Oh boy, I'm just checking. Okay, we're still good on Facebook and everything. My word.
Is there ever a calm week during U.S. men's national team soccer?
No, I guess not. So what we are going to be doing is we're going to be talking some World Cup quarterfinals and then previewing the semifinals. We also just had a huge story just break about Gio Reyna from Greg Berhalter, but not naming names. That's what that reference was if you didn't read that. But I don't know who hasn't seen it yet. I mean, we're actually going live probably like within the hour of when it happened, which is fun. Because look, I thought this was going to be a short episode. We get in, we talk quarterfinals, we talk semifinals, get out. Not much U.S. news to talk about, but then here it is, right? So this will be interesting to see and get your thoughts, Logan, and some of the listeners' thoughts if anybody jumps in here. I can't tell because it still says we're not live,
right?
But I see that we're live, so I don't know what's going on there. Okay, but before we do, I do want to do just a quick thing here for Grant Wall. Friday, we lost Grant Wall, who was a huge figure in U.S. soccer. He had been writing for the Sports Illustrated. He had been writing through numerous places. He now had his own newsletter. He had his own podcast after he was let go from Sports Illustrated, but he had unfortunately collapsed during the Argentina-Netherlands overtime. And just, our thoughts are out to his family and all of his friends who really, I mean, he was such a huge figure in U.S. soccer. Most people have been touched by Grant Wall and the work that he has done. He was really like the pinnacle of sports writing for U.S. soccer. So just sad we lost somebody like that. We're not going to speculate on anything like some people have been, look, they'll do investigations if there was anything wrong, but we're just going to focus more on, the great loss that we have experienced in the U.S. soccer community. So our hearts are out for all of his family and friends, who are many in this field. Okay. It's going to be hard to kind of flip the switch from that to what we have to talk about, because what we have to talk about is a lot of immaturity that we're going to be talking about next, which is, this broke like an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago. I don't know. The Berhalter quote. So I'm going to read this, and then we're going to talk about our thoughts on it. And then right before we went live, an article from Paul Tenorio and Sam Stejskal came out clarifying more information about it. So then we'll dig into that. Okay. So this is Berhalter speaking at some sort of like leadership training. And then this was on like Tuesday. And then it came up in the newsletter today. So somebody somehow got, if you were subscribed to this newsletter via email, you got it today. And if you're a soccer fan, you're like, I'm going to spread this around Twitter today. And that's what happened. Okay. An example I can give you. In this last World Cup, we had a player that was clearly not meeting expectations on and off the field. One of 26 players, so it stood out. As a staff, we sat together for hours, deliberating what we were going to do with this player. We were ready to book a plane ticket home. That's how extreme it was. And when it came down to it, we're going to have one more conversation with him. And part of the conversation was about how to behave from here on out. Or how we're going to behave from here on out. There aren't going to be any more infractions. But the other thing we said to him was, you're going to have to apologize to the group, but it's going to have to say why you're apologizing. It's going to have to be deeper than just, guys, I'm sorry. And I prepped the leadership group with this, and I said, okay, this guy is going to apologize to you as a group, to the whole team. And what was fantastic in this whole thing is that after he apologized, they stood up one by one and said, listen, it hasn't been good enough. You haven't been meeting our expectations of a teammate, and we want to see change. They really took ownership of that process, and from that day on, there were no issues with this player. All right. Most people kind of immediately were like, hey, this is Gio, right? And actually, you and I, Logan, we both texted the same link from the Men in Blazers Twitter account to each other in the same second, pretty much. I know I had sent it, and then like I got a message saying you had sent it, and I was like, oh geez, we're right on top of it. So I guess let's talk about it before we get into what actually happened with him, or before we thought it was Gio. I don't care who it is. I think this is fine. I think I might feel a little different about it, Logan, if I see everybody saying he went to the press to whine. This wasn't the press. He was literally speaking about leadership. It ended up in a leadership type newsletter. This wasn't meant for, I think, I don't, you may call it naive and naivete, and it probably is. I don't think he thought this was going to get out. as dumb as that sounds, I don't think he thought this was going to come out. Two, I don't think he cares if it comes out, because he's gone. His contract's up. I don't think he's worried about it. It's not like he's under contract still. I don't think he really cares. This is an example he was using in this talk about how he handled a leadership situation, right? Which is relevant to that. So everybody's saying, why are you bringing this up? It was relevant to the topic of what he's talking about. So I'm fine with that. I don't care. I guess you could say he should have used maybe the McKennie situation during World Cup qualifying. But I think people would then also be like, why is he bringing this up again now? Why is it, and it's just, you can't win. He's using an example from a time where he had to deal with a situation like this. And I think he may have naively thought that this wasn't going to be out. Like, I don't think his target audience was the U.S. media or U.S. soccer fans. I think he's like, I'm talking with other leadership people. This will be fun. He may also had no idea if this was going in a newsletter, is what I'm thinking too. He may have thought that this was just going to be that one talk on Tuesday, because we didn't hear about it until today. So I really don't think this would have got out if it wasn't in that newsletter. Strangely enough. Okay. He doesn't list any names, and I think that's fine too, because while people say this is obviously Gio, I saw a lot of people thinking, well, it could be Luca De La Torre. It could be Aaron Long, and that's why he didn't play. So there was reasonable doubt, right? So for people to say, like, he blew up the locker room because of this, I think that's wrong, because everybody seemed like other people were coming up with reasonable alternatives. So it wasn't a guarantee. My other thoughts on this are, before we get to Logan and his thoughts, I feel like we have to start. I saw a lot of people freaking out at Greg about this and not so much at the player. And I'm talking about before we even had confirmation. We now have confirmation who it was. We'll talk about it. But before we even got confirmation, I was a little worried that everybody was immediately like, Greg needs to go. He needs to be fired. One, again, his contract's up. He's not going to come back, is where I'm standing on it. People calling him insecure, all this kind of stuff. There's a certain time where we have to hold the players accountable. And I think US Twitter and US fans are a little too easy on the players at the top Euro clubs. They'll get on MLS players all the time. If this was an MLS player, they would be on team Greg right now of airing this laundry, I think. But when we had the same thing happen with Weston when he was immature, people didn't like Greg sending him home. But Weston came back fine, and he learned his lesson. These young players need that type of thing at times. There was no other issues with this player after this thing happened, right? So people were saying, well, why end up bringing it up again? Again, he was talking at a conference. This is different, right? So it's not like he's then just crying to the media. So I think we have to start holding the players a little bit more accountable, and specifically the ones at top Euro clubs, just because they are the most talented players we've ever seen in a U.S. shirt. Doesn't mean they can do whatever they want. Everybody hates the way Ronaldo acts right now. Do you want that? Do you want a player acting like Ronaldo, acting like he's the figure of the team, the figurehead of the team? I don't want that. I guess you could say, well, if he's going to score like Ronaldo, sure. But I don't know. I think there has to be this, the way that everybody was talking about how much of a team and brotherhood this team was, you can't let those cracks get in to the foundation. By giving a star player a more leeway that you're giving the people that are not as talented. It's kind of how I feel on it. Let me just see. I wrote down stuff, so I'm just trying to make sure I covered some of it before I pass the baton. All right. I think I'm good with what I said right now, but Logan, your thoughts on, I don't know if I've even said who the player is yet, but it was confirmed to be Gio Reyna. But before we even had confirmation, what were your thoughts and stuff like that?
Yeah, so my first thoughts, obviously, was Gio Reyna. I mean, you have these initial thoughts that maybe Weston was doing something again. But then again, I think, and Greg actually, there was a text message that went back and forth. I think Jeff Carlisle sent a text message to Greg, basically trying to confirm, hey, what's going on? And he texted back that it's very important that the group has standards, that there's a clear line in between like what the team is going to allow or disallow in that leadership group and that leadership council that the U.S. men's national team kind of have that sit atop, which is probably Pulisic. I'd imagine Tyler Adams is involved.
And I'd say probably like somebody like very experienced
like
players like Yedlin or I don't know, Ream.
Yedlin. Yeah,
Ream,
I think
maybe.
Yedlin.
I don't know.
I think who else? They said somebody else. I couldn't remember. It was Yedlin, and I think you're right. I think it was Reem. But it was definitely seasoned guys that were older that kind of had taken this leadership. Which I think that's the other issue, and I don't think it's talked about enough. Is just the fact that this group is so young that I think leadership is going to be done more collectively in that collective style than it is going to be one personal guy sitting down with another and going, "Hey, that's not what we do here." which I think is better just because I think they can collectively come up with a standard. Obviously, that standard wasn't met. I do think it's interesting, though, that like all these things are happening. And it's a lot of immaturity. A lot of it's Weston McKennie. Weston McKennie wasn't even in that window. And we talked about how crucial that was to maybe not qualifying and the fact that he was not in that qualifying window when we really needed him. But I think it goes to what Greg has been saying all along is that sometimes a clear pathway can help us understand like, this is not the way that this team is going to do it. And if you're going to do it like this, then you don't need to be on this team. So I think that was something that happened with Gio now. I think that it's a clear pathway forward. But then again, I think when you're looking at this as a whole, I think Greg's done. I think there is a little bit of concern just to the fact that like maybe some of the players didn't find that he was very effective in what he was doing as far as leading a team. And maybe that's got some truth to it as well when that came out that the players, and again, Gio's thing might come out as a result because Gio is the one that says, hey, the players in the top leagues don't like that Greg's here. And that might be Gio just trying to combat what happened at World Cup. But just the fact that like this whole Eric Wijnaldum thing, just, exploding. And then all this stuff comes out. It's kind of that headache you don't need around a team. I think Raheem Sterling a couple of years back, if I can remember correctly, this happened to England when Raheem was blowing up the team and it really impacted the way they played in 2018. And you just don't want that to happen. But I think the U.S. has been pretty straightforward in saying we're not going to allow that kind of crap because like you said, Jordan, do you really want a Cristiano Ronaldo sitting there grumpy, not happy? Then when they go and lose, he basically charges off the pitch, not with his teammates because he's pissed off because he didn't play. Like that ultimately is what happens.
We saw it, right? Did everybody see the video of the team celebrating when they come back to the hotel after beating Iran and Gio didn't look like he cared at all?
He had headphones on, like he didn't want to listen to it.
That's weird, right? I mean, that's just weird behavior, I think, when you're part of a team. I think what we also have to think of is that if the Wijnaldum stuff is correct at times here, right, is that was leaked by Gio's team, right? Not without full awareness of everything. I think Greg may have been trying to cover with the injury thing, I guess, to make it not look bad on Gio. I think he was trying to protect him a bit. And when Gio came out and said, no, I was fully healthy, it muddled the waters a bit, right? And kind of put all the pressure back on Greg again. I don't know. What my thought now is I saw a lot of people saying Greg shouldn't have said this and stuff. Look, how many of us, and me included, you included, we're asking, why isn't Gio playing? Why isn't Gio playing? And then the moment we get a half answer, of course it doesn't say his name. Everybody's like, well, he should not have said this at all. It's like, well, damned if you do, damned if you don't, really, right? Like what if Gray gets stood up here in Qatar and they ask him and he says, he was causing problems with the team. Would people have liked that? I don't know. You've been asking for it. They ask all the journalists to ask the hard questions and then they get the answers to it and say, sounds like Greg's a whiner. And that's the kind of stuff it's like, no matter who's the manager is going to face these issues. They're going to face these issues where the fans will always feel like they know better than whoever's in charge. And we're going to get more of this, Logan, when we have more and more talented players in a squad. Eventually, we're going to pick, well, we saw it this year too, but they're going to pick 26 players, and there's going to be a big name left off of there sometime because of either the way they fit or just how many talented players we have. Things like Pepe, right, not being part of the team. Things, like that, but at a higher level, right? We're going to see that at a higher level as we go further and further every 4 years because we're going to keep producing better and better players. So 2026, I already see some people doing mock squads, and it's leaving out big names because, well, we can only fit 26, and you're always going to have to face those issues. You're also not going to be able to play all 26 players, or 23 even if it goes back down next time. You can't play them all every World Cup either. So there's going to be decisions like that. And then when we get the answers of behind the scenes drama like this, people say, shouldn't have said it. So I think that's unfair. like I said, he's out of contract. I was asking the same questions. I got my answers now. We know why Gio wasn't playing. And here's the article from the Athletic. I'm not going to quote the whole thing. I'm just going to say a few things from this. So the sources that Tenorio and Stayskill had, who requested anonymity because they're not authorized to publicly speak on the matter, said that Reyna showed an alarming lack of effort in training ahead of the U.S. opening match against Wales. This was a scrimmage against the Qatari club Al Gharafa SC on November 17th. Reyna's lack of intensity in the scrimmage, sources described him as walking around throughout his time on the field during what was an otherwise intense situation. So that's the key part. I've seen people say, what? He didn't like that Gio wasn't going hard in a scrimmage. Yeah, because everybody else was. It was an intense game. Now, not to the intensity level where they're probably getting injured, but at a certain tempo to be real practice for a game for a World Cup. And another thing I have issues with people kind of just being like, well, maybe he was trying to not be injured and stuff, is he probably didn't play the full time. And if everybody else is playing, look, we didn't have warm-up games. There was no warm-up games for this World Cup. So this matters more than it would in a normal World Cup year, I feel. You usually have like 3 or 4 friendlies. This, you had none. You had a behind-the-door scrimmage, behind closed doors. The lack of effort was so pronounced that it was unclear whether Reyna was protecting against an injury or just frustrated that he was not set to be a starter against Wales. This also caused significant frustration within the team. So it's not just a Greg thing, people. It was the whole team was feeling like he wasn't trying hard enough. Then, after the Wales game, because in the Wales game, he threw his shin guards after not being subbed in. So again, bad behavior there, or I guess worrying behavior is what you would want to say. In the post-Wales training session, Reyna's lack of effort continued again, and it prompted several veterans to speak with Reyna, including DeAndre Yedlin and Aaron Long, who pulled him aside and urged him to show more effort going forward. This is what the leadership should do. So I'm fine with the players. I saw some of those Twitter accounts saying the players are soft, whatever. God, I don't understand. It's like you're so in love with just the idea of Gio Reyna, you can't take any criticism of the guy. It's so frustrating. It's frustrating, Logan. I'm so frustrated because every player should be held accountable as a team. So I don't see, and you know this, you used to coach baseball at times. You've been playing baseball at a higher level than me. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, you don't put up with it. The minute you put up with somebody that is going to act like this, then throw a temper tantrum. It brings down the team in a way that you can't really explain. But it's like this guy's always going to explode. We don't know what's going to happen. He's unpredictable. Are we going to lose him in a match? Like this could easily carry over onto the pitch where he does something stupid and you lose a guy, you go down 10, and then you lose a game because of it. It's detrimental in the fact that it seems to be, and I don't know Gio personally, but it seems to me, I played with guys like this, I've coached people like this, that this kid is a kid that grew up with people telling him how good he is, how valuable he is to a team, and that he deserves everything in the world. He's an entitled player. Like it just comes down to that. I don't know his personality well enough to state whether, that it's a negative effect on him and how he lives his life. But it does seem like every time that he's ever had any kind of issues, it's come back to feel bad for Gio. Things are going well for Gio, so Gio's going to throw a fit. And that it's that entitlement. It's that growing up where you were the best player, where your dad might have been the coach and probably was with Claudio.
So yeah, here's the thing.
It feels like that.
I had it when I was in baseball. I had a coach whose kid, they were also my neighbors, but they were, he was like our star pitcher, right? But he was awful. And like, he had good days, he had bad days. When he had a bad day, he threw temper tantrums like this, where he'd throw his glove and he would yell at his dad while he's on the mound. And it just created uncomfortable situations. And I could see where everybody's like, hey, we're at the World Cup. This is supposed to be fun. We're supposed to be playing at the highest level here. And we have our own teammate who's dragging us down and thinks that he is the star player. All these players know how talented Gio is. They do. That's not lost on them. They know how talent is, but they also know that you have to prove that on the pitch during game situations. And it's not like Greg didn't give him opportunities. He still played him against England. He still, while he didn't play him again with Iran, that was probably due to the Pulisic injury, where it kind of shuffled the plans around, I think. And then he gave him a whole 45 against the Netherlands. So obviously they had squashed this. He had to stand up and apologize to the whole team during a video session. But before that, they said that this had to be, it was so untenable. They had to address it multiple times, including with the coaching staff, until finally he stood up in a session and apologized. They had to talk about it multiple times. It should only need to be talked about once. And now we got Twitter accounts saying that he got in the face of Tyler Adams. If that's true, then, I'm team Tyler Adams. Sorry. He's the captain. That's his job, is to put people in line when they're doing stuff like this. So we saw how hard Tyler Adams worked during this World Cup. So I would be pissed as well if I was working, busting my ass the way Tyler Adams was, and I have a player whining the whole time. I'd be furious.
And we talked about this too before the show. It's gotten to a point now too where that's not going to be put up with if any of the coaches that are coming in or any of the staff that's coming in or the players that are coming in, just because we are no longer that team that's going to need to rely on Gio Reyna. We're going to have 2 or 3 of Gio Reynas. I think looking forward, you look at guys like McGlynn, you look at Paxton Aronson, you look at guys like that could easily step in to just take his spot and go, yeah, right, dude. Brendan Aronson, there are so many different players out there now. And it's going to get to that point in 2026 where Gio's got to look at himself in the mirror and go, I could easily be replaced on this team. And I've got nowhere else to go, because he's ultimately stuck now with the U.S. And if you're going to act like this, then he's just going to get stuck here. And there's going to be huge issues with just the fact that Claudio and just going down the line of just players and coaches that are over here in the MLS, and just it's going to have this chain reaction where people are going to be pissed at the U.S. men's national team because Gio Reyna, this top talent that came through as a youth player, was now being outsed by the U.S. men's national team. When I look at it, I think if somebody's going to act like that with all these young kids that are just stacked up, ready, waiting to go, and we're more talented as we go, like Paxton Aronson, I'd sign me up. I'd much rather have 2 of the Aronsons who are just going to play without any kind of Brendan. I guarantee you, Brendan had no issue being a super sub. He took that role. He said, you know what? I could play over Christian. I could not play over Christian. I could play over Timothy. I didn't play over Timothy, but I don't care. I'm here to have fun. And you can just tell with Brendan, there's none of that. There's none of that understanding of hey, I deserve to be on the pitch, and if I'm not, I'm going to go throw my shin guards up against the wall or something stupid.
And I think all players think that they deserve to be on the field.
They do.
But it's how you show it, and it's how you take those moments when you do. So here's something from Twitter. I just saw this. So this is Stefan Buxo, okay? He is a reporter for Freelance, former ESPN FC. He does the Yellow Wall Pod, which is a Borussia Dortmund podcast. And he retweeted the Paul Tenorio story. He says, this puts Gio Reyna in a very bad light and corresponds with his often bratty, pouty antics in a Dortmund shirt. Edin Terzic has criticized his players for a lack of intrinsic motivation this season. Hopefully, this was a wake-up call. So this is not just Greg. This is not just U.S. Soccer. This has been picked up by Germans, and they see the same thing. He needs to hold himself accountable, and he needs to stop the pouty antics because it looks childish. I don't care how young he is. He's 19, right? I remember being 19, and I wasn't that, okay? That's all these people I'm talking about, this kid that was in my baseball team, we were 12, okay? That is totally different than 19. So I think at a certain point, and we've seen players like Pulisic handle himself at that age. We've seen Brendan handle himself at that age. So it's totally totally different. We've seen his attitude problems in the past. So that's part of it. And again, it creates a distraction for the players. If people want to know more about that, look up about Winalda and John Harkes in 1998 and the effect that had on the team, which caused them to crash out of the World Cup after a promising 94 campaign. But yeah, so I think ultimately, and also England with their golden generation. You mentioned Sterling. I'm going to go way back. I'm going to go when they had Lampard, Rooney, Rio Ferdinand, John Terry shagging all these players' wives and causing all this internal strife that makes them get bounced out of the World Cup, in like 06, 10, all those times when they had those big squads that are probably more talented than the players they have now, but they underperformed every single World Cup. And it was because one, they couldn't let their club stuff get out of the way, and two, they were having personal problems. So that there you go. Like there's precedent on why you can't just be like, well, he's a star, we got to play him. Because when it does happen, France 2010 had all these players have these issues, and it caused them to get bounced out in the group stage. It happens over and over again. So all the people saying like, well, US people just need to deal with it. Look at what's happened in the past of USA, France, England, all these big teams that have had bigger personalities before. I kind of think if they still had Benzema in France and if he wasn't injured, I don't think they're where they're at right now.
Yeah.
I think Drew is much more of a team player.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Pogba's missing. So
yeah,
you have those two dynamic characters in a team. The one thing I think that is interesting that most people have pointed out on Twitter is that although like this would be something I think you would bring up anyway naturally in one of these just close to knit or close to chest conversations you think you're having with somebody, and I think that's why Greg did it. He just thought, well, maybe this won't get out kind of thing, which it's kind of speaks to how naive he is sometimes. But I think this is kind of like that final nail. That's like I am done coaching this team. And I'm just giving somebody a heads up as to here's what I was dealing with in my time with U.S. men's national team. I do think it has that feel where he's removing himself, because I think here too, you would still have some kind of rift with the players going, okay, if I do have an issue with Greg at some point, and if I have had an issue, then is he going to just tell whoever he wants this stuff? And I think that you kind of break this code, because so many times that just needs to stay in house, which they tried to do with Weston. But I think the good thing about Weston is Weston learned from it. Gio, I just don't know if he's capable. So it'll be interesting because that's a different kind of mentality. I think Weston was more of like, I just wanted to have fun. I'm young. I'm a kid. I make mistakes, like Foden.
Yeah. It wasn't.
This one's more egregious.
It was.
Yeah.
They're both shades of immaturity.
Yeah.
Right. No. This is what I was just reading though. I'm not going to say the Twitter account name, but this is what I was just reading. Are you ready? Maybe all of this Gio Reyna drama could have been prevented if there was true leadership from the coaching staff and veterans. I don't know. Are we just always going to act like whoever the coach is in the wrong? Like that just drives me nuts.
And what do you do? You really don't want to fracture a locker room. The best thing to do, I think, at that point is shut up, don't play him, let him sit over there and have his little moment, because you're not. I think sending him home would have caused a bigger distraction, right? I think making a bigger issue, if Tyler Adams comes out and goes, Gio Reyna is a jerk, that's why he's not playing, that causes issues. Then it causes this, like, I think they did it exactly how they should have. They kept him on the team. They said, hey, if you clear up your act, you could maybe get back in here later in this tournament and when we need you. And they did. They played him in a very important match. But I think that what they did was ultimately what you can't do anything else. What are you going to do? Like, if you send him home, people are going to, what the hell's going on? And then he's going to blow up. And then you're going to know why, because he's going to let you know. So, yeah, I think they did right.
I think we're good to move on from the Reyna storyline. I'm just looking at my notes. I think I said everything I want to say about it.
I got a couple of questions for you, though. A couple things came out before we get into the games. A couple of things came out as far as U.S. men's national team coaching is concerned.
Yeah.
There was like a list of names that came out. I don't think they're very reputable, the sources that came out to say them. Pep Guardiola was...
I think they're reputable because they come from The Athletic.
Are they?
But I think they're pie in the sky.
Yeah.
This is who we want. Doesn't mean that's who we're going to get.
Right. So I think it was Pep Guardiola was mentioned. Jesse Marsch was mentioned. I think who else was on that list? I think Louis van Gaal was mentioned at some point. Zinedine Zidane. You had Luis Enrique, Marcelo Bielsa, Roberto Martinez. and then Ricardo Gareca, who I don't know who that is. It's a former Peruvian national team coach. So those were some names. They are going to reach out to Pep. That's their first, I think, initial contact, just to see if he is interested. I don't think there's any momentum in behind that. I wish there was, but I just don't see him.
The issue is Pep would have to walk away from
a lot of money,
$20 million guaranteed each year until 2025. And then you'd probably have to match or exceed that amount for him. And I think the most we ever played was Klinsmann with like $6 to $11 million. I don't think we're reaching that. Okay.
Right.
So I'll say no on that end.
My issue is Zinedine Zidane. He's known for not knowing English. So
that's not going to happen.
I don't think that's going to happen.
They've been very
Bielsa
clear
as
they
well.
need to speak English.
Yeah, Bielsa as well. Roberto Martinez is an interesting shout, but I just don't care much for him. I think he's
tactically good. I do.
I just don't know if he's a youth or like how youthful this team is. I don't think it's ready for him.
Well, he did the same thing with Belgium.
I guess. Yeah.
I think he'd be fine. I think it's not a sexy hire though, right? I think he'd probably
Hervé is sexy.
Yeah, okay. Martinez would be a step up though. He would be a step up from Greg for sure. I think what I would say is I'm going to go ahead and say our next manager is not listed in that report. That's what I'll say. I have no sources.
I heard some people
for people watching. I'm just going to say I don't have any sources or anything. We're not that hit of a podcast, but it's just I feel like that's like the early feelers. Jesse would have to get, if it's going to be him, he's going to have to get fired from Leeds. I don't think he's going to leave them unless if they go down, he's going to get fired. If he keeps them up, he might say, I did what I could with this team and I'm out, but I think he would like to keep staying there.
I could see them playing with either not Greg, but maybe, somebody steps in like Lucci or somebody that is currently coaching with U.S. men's national team just for a year and a half, just while they look. I could totally see, because I think 2 years is roughly where you really need to have the coach in place outside of a World Cup. They've got a year and a half to figure this out. I don't think it's going to happen as quickly as we all want it to. I think it's going to be a process because I think they're going to wait for some of these coaches in the summer to get freed up from their clubs to be able to go after them and say, hey, are you going to be interested in this?
Summer would be the latest, I would not. I think we said that before. Give yourself 3 full years.
Yeah.
That's where I would lean on it.
And
a lot of these guys are mid, and that's what really screws up about the World Cup being mid-year, right?
Yeah.
Is now it's like, okay, we're going to have to figure out if we want a club manager, we have to wait until the club season's over to approach that because they're not going to leave their team. Like Pep's not going to, if it was going to be Pep, which is not, but if it was, he's not going to leave City in January to then coach some random
especially
friendlies
Champions
for
League,
Camp Cupcake in January. He's not going to do that.
Right. Because he's going to be hoping to play in Champions League.
Yes.
He wants to win one. Now, if you want Pep, you might be rooting for him to win the Champions League just so that he's freed up in July or ready to go wherever he wants to go. If he wants to come to the U.S., because that's what he wants. He wants one Champions League. I don't think he's going to settle until then. But I do think now he's gotten to the point where I think he has kind of had his head turned, kind of looking at his other options, because I do think something else is coming down the line for him. I just don't see him stepping out of coaching just yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be cool, though. Could you imagine? That'd be awesome.
Oh yeah,
and I know he gets along with the young players really well. So I know that he's turned completely around from what I think his reputation had been with Bayern and Barcelona.
Is he gonna play Gio or is he gonna?
I don't think he you know who he loves?
Tim Ream.
Yeah, he loves Tim Ream, and he loves a Jedi. I don't know what he like. I don't know whether he watches Fulham games a ton, and I do know
they have to. They probably watch video when they're playing.
He and who was the coach at Fulham last year? Scott Parker, right? Was it Scott Parker?
At one point, right?
Yeah,
I think
when it was Scott Parker, he and Scott Parker were really close because I remember when they went to Craven's Cottage, he oftentimes went out to eat the night before with Scott Parker. So
hopefully he paid for it.
He's
got more money than Parker.
Yeah.
I would hope he covered the check.
Yeah, Pep does that. So Pep does that with all the coaches that he visits with for FA Cup and for Carabao. He does that because he's.
Do you think they talk football? Like, do you think he's like, I'm coming at you tomorrow with a 4-2-3-1, and I like this.
I think he does with some of those teams. I guarantee he probably does because
I beg you to try to stop
right.
me.
He's that kind of cheeky, but I have heard that he brings wine and he pays for the check every time that he goes to the younger or to the smaller coaches. So that's nice. I like Pep.
That's very nice. Okay, let's get into our recap here of the quarterfinals. So Brazil, Croatia. That was the first game of Friday, and it was all right.
They seem like months ago. Like these games feel like they.
Yeah. I was thinking it was Thursday for some reason, but it was Friday.
Yeah.
Brazil, Croatia. Brazil was. I'm not gonna say this was a bad game, but this was like Croatia was playing how they do. Mm-hmm. Brazil couldn't break them down, and they had to go extra time. And then extra time was great. Extra time was like boom, 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 and you're like, whoa! And then Brazil scored, and this incredible Neymar goal. It was really good. And then they're all dancing. They're like, we made it through. Mm-hmm. And then Croatia's like, no, you didn't. And they equalized it. And then they go penalties, and Croatia nailed it in penalties. The goalkeeper comes up, makes a save. Their penalties were great, by the way. One of these gets hit like into the left side netting. Just like the keeper wasn't going to get to it. Allison was not going to reach that ball at all. But he got there. But the ball passed him in there, and I know Matt was like, "Hey, I could have told you that because Allison doesn't make saves." Brazil didn't make good penalties, and they probably needed one save. But you can get through a shootout without a save because somebody's the pressure, they're gonna sky it over the bar. We see that later in a few of these games. But yeah, Croatia just took the penalties so well, and this is something they've been known to do. We talked about it, I think last week when not last week, I guess midweek. I don't know when we last recorded, but they got through that game against Japan with penalties, and then they had in 2018 they went extras like every single knockout stage game to get to the final, and they're on track to do that again. I can't bet against them, but I also chose Argentina to win. So when we get to predictions, it'll be interesting for, I guess, what I have to pick here. But this was just so much fun seeing Croatia knock out Brazil. As much as people were begging for an Argentina-Brazil semifinal, I love seeing Croatia. I don't care. People calling them anti-football and all that kind of stuff. I love seeing teams that have not won it all, win it all. So if they can get close again, that's just incredible, especially with, giving Modric a World Cup would be fantastic before he steps away.
It's kind of fun to watch Luka Modric play still because it's like he's kind of gone, he's fading into what is, father time has caught up to him. But it is fun to kind of watch him because it's like he has these like resurgences up on the center stage, which is kind of fun because he was so talented leading up to 2022 just because he was younger, more crisp, but he still got it, man. Like he still plays extremely well. I think they've got a really good team. I think they're a team that the U.S. can look at and say, these aren't guys that are like topping out at the top players as top players in the league or top players in the world. I think the U.S. can look at them and say, these are guys that have been together for all this time. They've gone through the ringer. They've been in really important games. They get to the final in 2018 and lose to France, who was looking more and more like they're going to repeat. And I think you look at this team, and if you're the U.S., you go, I want to model them. Like, I want to be them. I want to be clinical. I want to be, I want to work as hard as I can, as efficient as I can in games. And you can take down these huge giants. Brazil was the betting favorite to win the World Cup this time around. And I mean, Croatia just frustrated them. And that's what Croatia does. And I think Croatia could very well frustrate Argentina. I think they've figured out, hey, we just shut down Messi. We've got a really good chance to win this game and head to our, second final in a row and hopefully meet up with France again, get a little bit of revenge maybe. But I just like watching them play. Jordan, I do want to ask you this. Are you concerned that maybe the window is starting to close on this Brazil being a heavy favorite kind of thing because Neymar's 30. He's going to be 34. He's maybe said that he doesn't want to play in the next World Cup. I don't buy it. I think he's going to be there. It's the U.S. It's a huge
The ego
stage.
will pull
Yeah.
him there. No
Yeah.
problem. You know how many times Messi retired from Argentina? You know how many? It was a lot.
Right.
So
hell, even Aguero retired, and he's still out on the pitch in like a collared shirt, like looking to go. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I think Brazil will always be a heavy favorite. As long as they play the beautiful style of game that they do, people are gonna
It's creative.
and the way that they like usually steamroll Cannibal for qualifying and stuff, I think they'll always be a heavy favorite because of their history, because of the gifted players they can produce. But here's the alarming thing, Logan. When they brush up against a UEFA member in a knockout stage,
they don't like it.
They get bounced out consistently since 2002. They have not won a knockout game against a UEFA opponent. That's not good because when you look at who wins World Cups, it's CONMEBOL and it's UEFA. So if you're going to have to go up and win a World Cup, you're going to have to face UEFA.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to do it if you want to win one of these. And they can't do it. They couldn't even do it in their own backyard. They got brutally slaughtered by Germany. What was it, 7-1?
Yeah, something like that. I think it was 7-1.
And I think, and I heard other people say this on other shows, but I agree with it. So I'm not just parroting it. But what it felt like is when they finally broke through for that Neymar goal. And I bought it too. I was like, that's it. That's all they need. And I think they thought that too. I think they were like, that's what we needed. We're not going to let them get back into this game. And they did. They were still pressing high up the field with a goal lead, which is, what we were kind of asking the U.S. to do against Iran. But what they did was they lost the ball and didn't track back fast enough, and then they get caught out and Croatia scores. It takes a deflection, but, sometimes that happens. I'm more disappointed in their penalties. They didn't look good at all. So you have to learn how to win a shootout, and you have to start winning against UEFA opponents. And you can blame the coaches. I saw some people blaming the coaches, but the thing is, Brazil has not beat a UEFA opponent since 2002. I don't know if it's just in their head, because you can say that. You can say 2002, but none of those players playing were from 2002. But it's almost like it might be a meaningless stat, but it's a stat where I think the more and more it happens, the more and more it's going to become true, right? Like, I feel like if they brush up against a UEFA opponent in 2026, they might struggle the same fate. There's rumors of them trying to join the UEFA Nations League for after 2024 CONMEBOL, which would be weird, but
can we get in on that?
That's what I was wondering. Then it would just be like another World Cup.
Can we just pay somebody to get in on that?
But if so, that might be what they need, because they'll be playing UEFA opponents all the time, and they'll kind of be able to pick up a little bit more on maybe how to beat them. But I think, I've seen some people also say, well, the USA is not going to win a World Cup in our lifetime because Brazil hasn't won one in 20 years. And I'm like, but other teams have, right?
Yeah.
Like somebody wins.
Yeah.
But I think it's just the world is catching up. It's really hard to score in football. And when you have the teams that go in a low block, it's hard to break down. And a Croatia team that does that and purposely frustrates you for 120 minutes, they know what they're doing. Croatia just knows how to get through this. And I wouldn't bet against them against Argentina doing the same exact thing and getting through. The difference is the magic of Leo Messi, who might be able to break down that from 40 yards.
I mean, you look at their roster; it's just impressive to me, which is why I always I'm confused when they don't get through because of all the talent that they do have. And I think it's legit talent. Like, it's Rafinha, it's Richarlison, it's Neymar, it's Vinicius Jr. Casemiro's been really good. Marquinhos has been fantastic. Silva is a proven veteran that just knows how to play. You've got
probably getting a little too old though.
Yeah, but still, I mean, he plays serviceably back there. It's not like he lets anything.
No, yeah, he's great for Chelsea.
Right. So, but it just. like you start to look at this window and you're like, man, we're wasting probably one of the best players we've ever had from Brazil. He's up there in the top 5, top 2,
Neymar?
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
he just tied Pele's
I was going to
record,
say
right? I
Ty
mean,
Pele. Yeah.
that's when you're in company with Pele,
Right.
you're in pretty good
And you
company.
got Ronaldo, but it's like Neymar's. I mean, you're wasting like this version of like Mbappe, or it's Messi, it's Ronaldo. Like this is their guy right now.
Well, this whole Neymar's career as a whole has
Yeah.
been wasted because he's gone to
Right.
PSG, and then
Right.
his Brazil team is not doing anything. That's
Yeah.
frustrating.
Yes.
Imagine the level he could have been at if he had either stayed at Barcelona or
Right.
if I know he wanted to make his
Or
own.
went to the Premier League. Like
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's
He
the
wanted
mistake.
to he wanted to be the person that puts the team on his back. It's tough to do when you're like
one guy in
when
soccer.
you're one guy in soccer. It is tough to do. We saw Leo do it at Barcelona, but also he started not winning as much when the rest of that golden generation of Spain got phased out of Barcelona. So
Ronaldo,
it wasn't always Messi.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where Neymar went there, is trying to do. But even with Mbappe, even with Messi, they can't win the Champions League. And if he had gone somewhere like a United or a Chelsea or a City, like maybe he's even a bigger name on the global stage. I mean, of course, everybody knows who he is, but maybe a bigger name in America, because we cannot really watch that many games of PSG because it's on BN Sport and it doesn't get broadcasted enough. If he's playing on NBC, if he's playing on ABC, like his name's going to get more known than frickin'.
And Europe only knows him when they watch PSG, but nobody likes to watch Ligue 1 because it's just it's a farmers league. Like it's become the point where nobody can test PSG. Like it just doesn't.
Well, they just didn't win it a few years ago, didn't they?
Yeah, but it still feels like every year they're going to win it. Whereas like City, I do feel is more vulnerable. I feel like Barcelona and Madrid were more vulnerable. Like I just feel like PSG is just they're going to win that thing every year. But
let's just go through the predictions real quick. So this game finished 1-1, went to penalties. Croatia won. I predicted 4-1 Brazil. You predicted 3-0 Brazil. So none of us got that right. Then we went to Netherlands, Argentina, which was an instant classic. This game was one of the best World Cup games of all time. And it's a meeting that happens a lot in the World Cup.
It's weird.
But finished 2-2. And this game was legendary because it was a 2-0 lead in the 73rd minute after Messi took a penalty. And I was like, that's it. It's over. Also, Messi had this great, no-look pass that he did to set up the first goal, which was amazing. Soak it in, guys. This is his last World Cup. You might be watching his last game on Tuesday. Soak it in, people. Because that was mind-blowing. The fact that he's doing that at his age still is just
unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. He converts the penalty in the 73rd minute. Then Weghorst scores a brace in the 83rd minute, and then in the 90th plus minute, the last kick of the game, they pull this training ground free kick where they softly roll it to him. Amazing. He turns and scores. He does the same thing in Wolfsburg. Look it up. I think I retweeted it, but he does the same move, the same exact thing. I feel like they were just like, hey, you know that thing you did for your club? We're doing that. Do that. And it worked.
It did.
And they went to penalties, and unfortunately they fell. And I say unfortunately because while I did pick Argentina to win, I've been kind of rooting for a new winner. So I was like, oh, like Netherlands could be fun. Plus, I was having so much fun. I was like, let's keep going. Like extra time, and then extra time was fun. And then we get to penalties. And what were they doing? I don't know how good VVD is at penalties, but they had him go first. Neymar famously didn't even shoot a penalty in Brazil because they were putting him fifth. He would have taken that penalty last. And there's this old school mentality, I will say. The old school mentality of put your best player fifth, because if you need to convert that to win or keep going, you want your best taker. Where that falls apart is when he doesn't even step up to take a penalty. And what did Argentina do? They set this is actually after VVD misses, by the way. They send Messi up there, and he converts. You put your best penalty. It's starting to lean more towards put your best first, because the statistics are starting to show if you miss that first one, you are losing these shootouts more than you're winning. So, peoples, what I would do if you want to not put them first, Neymar should have went third. Like, I just feel like if you don't want to put him first and you want to put him last, don't put him last because you might not make it to that. Put him third. That's going to guarantee he steps up and takes one. Is kind of my thought on it. So VVD misses. Steven Berghuis misses when Messi puts his away. So it's 1-0 Argentina. Then it's Paredes who scores for Argentina to make it 2-0. Coop Miners scores for Netherlands to make it 2-1. Gonzalo Montiel scores for Argentina to make it 3-1. Wout Weghorst, who scored the double, scores a third, a penalty. So it's not technically a third, but 3-2 is the score there. Then Enzo Fernandez. He's the one that skied it over the bar, right? He messes it up. And then Luke de Jong ties it up to make it 3-3. And then Lautaro Martinez steps up and makes the penalty to make it 4-3 in penalties to Argentina. And a fun thing I did here is in this, the real score was 2-2 Argentina in penalties. Logan, you were the closest on this. I had a 2-1 Argentina win. You had Argentina going through on penalties. 1-1 was the score, though, so you were off the scoreline. And I asked you if Messi would make his penalty. You said yes, and he did. So you were really close.
Look at me. Should have put it in Vegas. What was I doing? I should have put 2-2. I could have made a lot of money. That would have been. We'd have got a studio, Jordan. I don't know where, but we got one.
Yeah, halfway. We'd be flying planes to work every day.
Right.
Yes, but that was just a classic game. If people for some reason are listening to us and have not watched the highlights of that Netherlands Argentina game, put us down. Pull up the Netherlands Argentina highlights because they were fun. Okay. Portugal, Morocco, real score 1-0 Morocco. We both had 2-0 Portugal win. So we were feeling a little bit more. We were right that we thought Ronaldo wouldn't start. He didn't, but he had to come in while they were down 1-0. And guess what? Still has not scored a knockout stage goal in his 5 World Cups. Morocco scored in the 42nd minute by Nasari. I think that was how they were saying it on the show. Header. I don't know what the keeper was doing. Who was that? Rui Patricio? Who was it was Diego Costa. Yes, I signed him on my FIFA career a few years ago.
I do that all the time with him. So
yeah. But they did get a second yellow, just 2 minutes apart for a person that came in. When did he come in? He came in the 65th minute. He gets sent off in the 90th minute. Barely played. Morocco. So he'll miss the next game. And I know some people are saying it's not a yellow. I know you said that as well. For me, I'm like, if you already have a yellow, you can't make that challenge. For me, I'm always more of the you can't put it in the hands of the ref to make the right call, because sometimes they're gonna miss. Sometimes they're gonna miss on the calls. And I'll have a lot to say about referees after we talk the next game. Anything more about Portugal? This is Ronaldo's end of his World Cup career. He's gone.
I mean,
and he didn't stay on the field. He walked right off.
Yeah. It's kind of similar to, I could compare them, I guess, not as good as Brazil, because they have a couple players they don't really have in Portugal's side that can score as much as Brazil can. But I do feel like, Portugal had one of their best shots this time around than they've had in a while. I felt like this team is built well enough with a lot of young guys, a lot of interesting talent, a lot of guys that I think are at top levels in which they're playing at club. And then, some of their subs, they're top level subs. So, this is really disappointing for Portugal. I thought this was a year where they deserved to be at least in the semifinals, playing for a chance to get into the finals of the World Cup, but they're not. And Morocco, on the flip side, plays just as good defense as anybody in this tournament. They did lose Roman Saiz. I don't know if he's going to be out for the next match, but to lose him as kind of like that anchor in the back does hurt Morocco. But I was really impressed with some of the Moroccan players. Hakimi, I think is how you pronounce that, right? He's been fantastic. I knew of him just because he's been in and around other places. I think he was in Dortmund for a little bit. And so he's looked great. I thought Hakimi's played pretty well. Ziyech's played pretty well. And Boufal's been pretty good. So they're getting good play out of guys that they really need to play well. Yeah, I'm pretty impressed with this Moroccan team. And now I'm full Moroccan. I'm hoping that they can pull off the upsets to get to the final just because I think it'd be a lot of fun.
They haven't given up a goal that wasn't
Right.
an own goal. That is just insane to think about. And can they make it all the way to the final like that? That's going to be tough. That's going to be tough to do, especially against a potent France team that did not look super great against England and still scored 2 goals. So that's going to be tough for Morocco, but I don't know. I'm on board with them. It's hard to bet against them, but it's also hard to bet against France. And that's kind of where we're at with the semifinals, right? I mean, that's kind of how it should be. I just said that each of these teams can pretty much get to the final when I keep saying I wouldn't bet against Croatia, but also I wouldn't bet against Messi, and I wouldn't bet against Morocco, but I wouldn't bet against France. Like, I know that sounds like just dumb, but it's one of those things where I'm like, this is really up in the air. I can see any of these teams winning. The level it would be for Morocco to win this, for people that don't follow the Euros or hasn't been following long, Greece won the Euros in 2004. And they did that with a staunch defense in 2004. And it was kind of one of the biggest things that could ever happen because Greece wasn't like a soccer powerhouse. And really, they've been irrelevant since that run of like 2000 to like 2010, where they were kind of a goodish team, really good defense, occasional goal. This would be way bigger than that. This is the first African team to reach the semifinals. And if they can be the first African team to reach the finals and then they end up winning, what that does for all of African football, and then what it also does, this would be bigger than Leicester winning the Premier League. Like that would be one of the biggest storylines in world soccer ever, right? And that's something that'd be really, really great. So I love underdog story. I would love to see Morocco win it all if they could. But I guess let's talk England, France.
Let's talk England, France.
Real score was 2-1. I had 3-1. Logan had 2-1. But you get some minus points because you said Mbappe would score 2, and he did not. He's had a really quiet game, actually.
He sucks.
Kyle Walker is shutting him down over there.
Often does. Should have known that.
Yeah.
He does it all the time with City.
Tchouaméni scored in the 17th minute for France, a rocket. And then a Harry Kane penalty in the 54th minute. Saka got the call there, which was, I thought, a clear penalty. And Saka was not getting a lot of calls, which I always hear Arsenal fans say, and that was true. And then Giroud in the 78th minute scores another goal there, assisted by Griezmann, who assisted both, by the way. And then in the 82nd minute, it's a yellow card and a penalty on Theo Hernandez, and Harry Kane steps up. And by the way, this had to get VAR checked. They didn't immediately call this. It was Mason Mount just getting absolutely decked without Hernandez turning around at all. I saw that happen. I was immediately like, that's a penalty. And then I'm like, what is going on? And they kept showing it. And I'm like, are they going to review it? Because this was clearly a penalty. They do. The ref has to do the box motion. He points to the spot. And I was like, thank you. And part of me, I was totally neutral on this. I don't really like, I know some people hate England because they are entitlement stuff. I think the players on this English team are really likable.
They are very likable.
And yes. I think France, I really love Giroud. So I was kind of like,
Same.
I was just sitting back and it was a really great game. So I was like, call that a penalty. Let's go extra time. And then Kane said, I kind of want to go home. And he skies it over the bar and missed. He had actually, on his first penalty, had tied Wayne Rooney for the most goals by an English player. So crazy to think, because I don't think Harry Kane's been part of the team that long. But I guess he has. I mean, it just feels like, I don't know. I guess I'm just getting old. But yeah, so that's how it kind of ended there with the missed penalty. I know you have a bone to pick with the media for England and the fans. I have a bone to pick with them too, because, and it's not the same thing you had. I was scrolling last night, and of course I've seen so many people say, Harry Kane's not going to be able to live that down with the English fans. I'm scrolling Twitter last night. After the game, I drove to my parents' house. We had pizza, chilling. And my dad had just said that to me. He's like, hey, he's not going to be able to live that down. And I was scrolling and I was like, you just said this, and listen to this guy. And it was a guy on TalkSport. It was a fan being interviewed after the game that said that he couldn't, while he does blame Kane for the miss, he also blames Gareth Southgate for even bringing Harry Kane, the guy that just tied Wayne Rooney with the most goals in English history. Shouldn't have brought him. Passed it. What? We need a Harry Kane in England. I would sign him up. Oh my God. It was, for people that create the sport, they know absolutely nothing about it. It's like listening to local sports radio after a quarterback goes 40 for 44 for 500 yards, but had maybe one interception, and it's time to bring in the backup. It was ludicrous, Logan.
Yeah, I saw some sentiments too, and obviously, I think it's because I work for a British company, and I was kind of leaning more towards the Brits, just because I wanted, they don't like. It's like they call them England, you can't call them British, and
well, you can't call them Brits because that also includes Wales and Scotland, right. So you have to call them English for this.
Yeah. I work for an English company, and so I was rooting for them because I was like, I want them to be happy because they deserve it. They haven't won one in a while. Why not? I don't want to see France win it back to back. So I was like, you know what? I'm leaning more towards England. And then after the game, and it's been ever since, I just listened while I was cooking dinner. I was listening to ESPN FC, and I was listening to some of the pundits on English, like Sky Sports. Like I jumped between 2 or 3, and every single one of them, called them the best team in the World Cup, and basically had the one direct quote said, this is the best team, and there's no that this happens quite a bit in tournaments where the best team gets bounced, and that just happens. And I said,
well, it did. How it was Brazil? They got
right. That's what I said. I was like, how dare they talk about Brazil and not name them? No, but I stop calling yourself the best team when you haven't won a World Cup for like 40 something years. Like you're not the best team
since 1966. Yes.
I was like, I can't do math right now, but I knew it was in 66, right? Yeah. So you haven't won a freaking World Cup in 6 decades. Okay. We were a country, I think, before you guys won the World Cup. But no, it frustrates the hell out of me how entitled, because it's the same thing too, that when they talk to me, I've had British students, I've had people I work with that are British. I talk to, on Twitter, we talk to a bunch of British people, and there's just like this, like, oh, well, America, what do you guys have? You guys call it soccer. And I'm like, okay, that's funny. But until you beat us at a World Cup and you win a World Cup, you can't mess with us. Like, you're lucky we didn't bounce you to go play the Netherlands, because you probably would have gotten beat there. And we would have been playing Senegal, and we could have won. So it just frustrates the hell out of me, just because they think that their soccer and their football is so much more than what it really is. Sometimes they think that League 1 or 2 could smash up the MLS. I don't think they could at all. I've seen League 1 and 2, and I've seen Championship, and there's a lot of MLS teams that would beat the hell out of those teams. So it frustrates me. I'm tired of them being called the best at everything they do. Harry Kane is not the best striker in the world. That's a Norwegian. The best player in the world is not on a British team. The best young player in the team or in the world is not on the British team. So, like, stop saying you are the best until you prove you are the best and beat us on a stage, or beat somebody else on the stage, like France, like Germany, like, who just go down the list. They can't beat teams. So, like, stop this. You're not the best. Harry Kane's a choke. Like, there's a reason he plays for Tottenham. Like, it's just all of this stuff. It just mounts and it just pisses me off because they think they're so much better at that sport than so many other countries that are way better than they ever will be.
Well, it's funny because while they do have the best league in the world, it's because
All the
other people
internationals.
go to it. Yeah. It's not because of the English players. I mean, some of it is, right? When you have some of their players. But I don't know. I get what you're saying. And it's funny that I don't
They don't
really
have a
know
top player
like
in the world. They just don't. Like, they've never produced the top player in the world. So why do they think that they have these top players in the world when I'm like, ugh.
well, I mean, Harry Kane is a top striker. He's not the best, right? But I
No,
mean, he is like
he's a good striker.
Erling
Yes,
Haaland is coming. I mean,
yes,
he's world class. I will say he's
yeah,
world class, but he's not like the best. I think even Robert Lewandowski was better than him. And and then you have now he's being upstaged by Erling Haaland, right?
yeah.
So you have this
And Hani Mukhtar.
yeah, yeah. You have these levels, right? And it's it is interesting how some of these English players just get like Mount
Frazzled.
hasn't been great for Chelsea this year, but kind of nobody seems to care. They're always on Pulisic's butt, about how he's playing. Or Ziyech's butt. And then they go to the World Cup and they're playing fantastic. I don't know, just a lot of fun there. But yeah, so let's I don't know. I think what it is because they think so highly of their team that when they fail, and look, they were one of the best teams, like goal scoring wise, and they were playing pretty well. But
They never win when it matters.
right.
They have never won when it matters ever.
Not since
Like,
'66.
yeah, and
Yep,
hell,
that's a long
most
time.
people alive can't even remember those games.
I
Especially
remember.
the people, right? Especially the people on Twitter going, they were the
I was
best.
sitting seat 32.
The best.
No, it is funny. I don't know. I think they'll always have that mentality.
You know what?
I don't know why, but
yeah.
the English fans will always have that mentality of we're better than anywhere else. And yes, sometimes they were the better team against France. Like when you include things like possession and the chances they created,
Yes, they were.
but when it
team.
came to scoring, which is
France
what matters,
better at that.
France was better.
Just like
France
the last time they met. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and here's another thing. And if you're just getting into soccer, like if we're like the start, because I know so many people get started with World Cup. Here's something you got to know, and it you can play a victim as much as you want as a U.S. fan, but it is 100% true. The rest of the world doesn't want the U.S. to be successful, and the reason why is because once the U.S. figures out and unlocks the soccer world, the money, the resources, it's so plentiful over here in the United States. We dominate in every other sport that we play similarly to them. We do it in hockey. We've done it in basketball. We do it in different sports. Like we will eventually, it might not be in our lifetime. Maybe it will. Maybe it's coming. We will eventually catch up to them. And they're scared of that because when that does happen, you really will have the United States and MLS, as much as they want to laugh at it, you will have a league that will be very competitive to those leagues over there. And they're not going to like it because they're going to think, oh crap, we're going to lose all this talent and TV money. And once you suck that place full of the TV money that the U.S. puts into that and everything else, there is a really good chance, Jordan, that the U.S., we're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And I don't think the rest of the world wants that, at least not right now.
The only thing that I would say is limiting, and this could be a whole episode.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
That is limiting the MLS from really being able to bring in the big stars and be able to eventually be the biggest league is that they don't have something as historical and as large and as money making as the UEFA Champions League.
Yes.
That is the thing that's killer. When we hear how many players move from a club to a club because they say, I want to play in the Champions League. How do we look at when we're looking at U.S. talent and we say they play for a Champions League club? We put such an emphasis on that, and so do the fans and so do the players. That's what they have to overcome, and that's what MLS has to overcome. So there's a few ways that has to happen. They either have to somehow get involved with the Champions League in UEFA, or they have to overpay. Right now, they're not overpaying, and they have no entry into the Champions League. So that is kind of the hard line in the sand right now of why MLS cannot automatically become the top league in the world. Instead, it's going to take something like 40, 50, 60 years for that to happen. Now, US winning a World Cup could happen
It
sooner.
accelerates that too.
It could happen sooner because the players that we are counting on are going to those clubs and playing at a high level, and we'll keep producing those players because they'll get play time through their USL club, they'll get play time through their MLS club, and then they'll get sold on for big money like they have been. I mean, post-pandemic, these US players have been going over like hotcakes. And then they reach over there, they start playing over there, and they get better. That's the Brendan Aronson story. Comes up through the youth squad, plays well for the Union, goes to Salzburg, plays well there, makes the jump to Leeds. Everybody loves him. Boom, boom, boom. Right? And then his next step is going to be a club bigger than Leeds, most likely. And he's still what, 20, 21? Yeah. I mean, something like that. So that could help us become. I think it's more reasonable that we win a World Cup before MLS is the top league. And I've seen a lot of people say, well, one of the things that's limiting growth here is the pay for play system here compared to other spots. But as you mentioned, Logan, we do all of our sports at the top level, and all of them are pretty expensive. Baseball, signing up for baseball, even me signing up for softball rec league was like, what, $50 to $75?
Yeah, the resources and equipment.
For me,
fields,
an adult who's not going to actually play like a meaningful level, like it's just for fun. And for kids, it's more expensive. And so I don't know if that's limiting it so much. And the thing is, as MLS grows and as USL continues to grow and we start getting more of those academies in areas, it's going to be easier to kind of grab those players, I think, and do that. So I actually think, and this could be a whole episode, like I said, of like MLS becoming a top league. But if we're just looking at USA winning a World Cup, that can happen within our lifetime. Kind of more down on MLS becoming the top league in my lifetime, but I think it'll be well on its way.
Yeah,
in my lifetime.
No, it'll be hard to catch the Prem, and that's what I was saying. I was like, I don't know if we'll see it become the league. It will, but I think eventually it will when you unlock. And the other thing that's stopping it is the pay. As far as like paying players, it's a big stop. Like if Inter Miami could go to Cristiano Ronaldo, or NYCFC could go to Ronaldo and go, hey, we'll give you $250 million. Just come play over here. He'd be like, hell yes, I'll come.
I don't know. He's turning that down in Saudi Arabia right now.
Yeah, but I think that's because I think it hurts his branding. He's more interested in his branding. His brand would be huge over here. I just don't know. I think legally he's not allowed in the States. I have no idea how that works. But
there's rumors of that, but I think they did drop the charge, so you'd probably be fine. But yeah, I mean, then it becomes a question of, do we want them?
Yeah, sounds like Messi's coming, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. The PSG guy was kind of like, I don't know about that. So we'll see.
Enter who? Is that in Italy?
Like, who is that? Beckham's team? My former player. If people didn't know, Beckham did play for PSG for a bit. Okay. Let's make some predictions. So here's our semifinals: Argentina, Croatia, and France, Morocco. I saw some people calling this on Twitter the weakest semifinals in history, and I said BS. All these teams deserve to get here. They played their asses off to get here. I don't know how you can say it's weak. I mean, maybe it's not the sexy matchups you want it, but I mean, those other teams should have won then, is how I feel about that. I don't know. I stuck with Argentina to win it all. I'm going to have to do it. I'm going to say that they slipped through Croatia, but I'm going to say that game finishes 1-0 Messi magic to win it. What's your thoughts on Argentina, Croatia?
I'm going to go 1-1 penalty shootout again. And I'm going to say that Argentina wins it just because they've got really good attacking players. Again, like I think I said last time. But yeah, I'm going to say that it's the magic of the penalties again.
Yeah, you feel like they have to run out of the magic when it comes to Croatia, right?
Yeah, I think so.
You
2
can't
years
keep
straight.
pushing. You can't keep
Or
pushing the
2
teams to
times.
penalties each time. You're going to get exhausted playing 120 minutes each time, and you're going to eventually. Penalties are such a coin toss. It'd be really tough. And then France, Morocco. I'm going to go with I would love a Croatia Morocco final, but I have to bet against that. Even though I said I can't bet against that, I'm going to go France wins this one 1-0. Giroud magic is what I'm going to say there.
France looked wobbly against England. First time they've kind of been challenged.
Yeah, but they're not gonna face that type of challenge against Morocco. They'll have to break them down, and that.
I was gonna say I think the defense might be stronger with Morocco than it was with England. But that being said, their midfield is going to lack the star power that England does sometimes. So yeah, as much as I want to pick Morocco, I think it'll be a lot closer than people think. But I do think France ends up winning it. I'm gonna go 2-0 France.
All right. Well, that's great. So if that's the case, we'll have an Argentina, France final. Messi, who's never won a World Cup, going up against a team that just won it in 2018. But here's the fun thing. There's been no repeat champion since Brazil in 1962. That's older than England winning a World Cup. So
wow, that's ancient.
That is ancient.
You guys never won one.
Yeah, Pele was still playing. That's how old that is. So that's tough to do. It's tough to do. And if they do, this France team becomes legendary. It becomes one of the best teams of all time.
Yeah.
If they can win this thing back to back. And if that's the case, we'll preview it later this week after the semifinals. We'll have to talk about that, I think, off the air, what lines up schedule-wise. But it'd be sometime before the third place game on Saturday. Is probably how we have to do that. We'll preview the third place game. We'll preview the first place game, I guess, the final. And that's what we'll be talking about next week. We'll also cover any more U.S. stuff that happens to creep up. We weren't planning this Gio Reyna news at all. That happened, like I said, right before we went on air. So you had to cover that. And then, so next episode, we'll be previewing the final. And then we'll do an episode recapping the final. And then we'll probably take a break for Christmas, the week of Christmas. And then we'll come back and start looking at, we'll have an expansion draft. We'll have we'll have to talk about the expansion draft.
We'll have to catch up on the MLS.
There is the MLS Super Draft happening the week of Christmas as well. I think it's the 23rd.
Yeah.
So we'll have to talk about that as well. And then we'll start our previews in the new year for 2023. And I guess if we get any more news about the Apple deal, there was prices and stuff. We'll talk about that after the World Cup. We'll get to all that. I don't think we talked about that at all yet. We'll talk about all that stuff after the World Cup. Logan, any other thoughts before we jump out of here today?
Barring the location of the World Cup, this has been my favorite World Cup I've ever watched. So and that's saying a lot.
On the field stuff has been great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the play has been phenomenal. The smaller countries are starting to catch up, and that's really exciting for world football. Like I really do feel like I was looking at the round of 16 again today because I was bored, and I was like, they're really. I mean, I realistically could have seen all these 16 teams like playing in this last couple of days. Like that's how good this round of 16 stuff has been. It's been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to 2026, man. I know it's crazy because we're still going 2022, but like I'm dying with anticipation. I'm gonna go to a game or two. We've got to go. I'm gonna start saving money and put some money aside for a World Cup trip. But I'll go to any game. I don't care, even if it's not the U.S. So I'm excited about that. I've been really excited just kind of watching this. It's gotten me re-energized. I'm pumped for the MLS season. A lot's been going on behind the curtains that we'll talk about. Not Jim, but the other curtains. So, but man, it's been a lot of fun, Jordan. It feels like I just texted you this. It doesn't feel real that we're gonna be done with the World Cup starting next week.
Yeah, well, we got a week away from the final. That's scary because it came and went, and then right after that it's Christmas. So we're gonna be going through some stuff. I'm happy I took off the semifinals, so I will be probably tweeting along with them. I'll be sitting back and relaxing, watching these great matchups. I'm really glad I took off now because these games are really intriguing, I think, and I could see both of them going extra time, honestly. With the way Morocco play and the way that Croatia play, this is going to be very interesting. I'm pumped. I'm rooting for a Morocco-Croatia final. Give me a first-time winner, but Logan, we could end up with a rematch of 2018 Croatia-France, which I'd have to look up how many times we've had repeat, not just final repeat teams. Winners, but repeat final teams back to back. And if Croatia has enough to get past them,
that'd be so cool.
Oh my, that would be tasty. That'd be great. So we'll have that stat for you if it happens, I guess. And maybe I'll look it up just to see. Anyway, we'll see. If anybody wants to follow us on all of our platforms, at Stateside Show is where we are on all of our socials, and email us statesideshow@gmail.com. We're going to try to end the stream. It doesn't have the stop button, so I don't know how that's going to happen. Guess we'll see. Bear with us. We might have to exit out of the studio. But yeah, hope everyone has a great rest of their week, and we'll catch you later this week for the semifinal preview. Or the semifinal recap. The final preview, my bad. And we are still alive, so I will let's leave the studio. Let's see if that stops it.
Okay.